Hey, before we start the episode, this is just a reminder this episode does take place before we had changed to a strictly interview format, and as such, there may be references to the other episodes we used to do that don't have anything to do with that. You can disregard that and just enjoy the episode.
The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bitten by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing ring. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien help me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, and as always, I'm your host for the show. Big thanks to Ukla and Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. Big thanks to you, listener, for tuning in once again to our show, and big thanks to our guest, Jed MacKay, for being the subject of tonight's episode. I had a great talk with Jed. We are both very much 90s kids when it comes to comics. Some of the things we get into and we talk about are things that are painfully 90s, sort of storylines, costumes, some characters popped up here and there, especially few in relating to Taskmaster, which is a character that Jed got to write. Jed currently is a writer for Marvel Comics, freelancing, as well as working soon on Magic Comics with Boom, and a lot of other cool things, and also a good homegrown Atlantic Canadian kid coming from P.E.I. So I had a great talk with Jed. Super fun, and man, I'm lucky I get to do this. Really, I am, and I'm feeling incredibly grateful right now for the opportunities I've had to kind of do this podcast. Something sort of started with my extra time during COVID and sort of continued on because it's been a blast, man. Talking about comic book histories has been fun, and I really, really enjoy these interview segments where I get to learn a lot about some of my favorite comic creators, writers, local people that have made a go of it and have succeeded. And I'm beyond lucky that I get to do this. So I'm very happy to do it. I'm really happy to have a great audience that are tuning in. I've been getting a little bit of feedback lately, and it's been great to hear. Thank you so much for listening and for sending that feedback in, because it really helps. It really does. But anyway, without much further ado, I won't go into what's going on in the comics world too much right now, because there's lots of stuff, as always, all the time, happening constantly. WandaVision episode 5 has been out. Ours at 6. Which has been pretty great. I'm really digging that show still, and they've made a big announcement that Batman, they're doing a series, I think it's Batman 89 or 88 or 90. I think it's 89, which is going to be the comic book continuation of the continuity of the Michael Keaton Batman films, which is interesting. It's going to be going out alongside the Christopher Reeve Superman series that they're going to be putting out as well. So yeah, some interesting nostalgia stuff, which kind of connects roundly to what Jed and I talk about with some of the comics from the past and some of the nostalgia that brings, and the sandbox that you get to play in when you're a comic book writer with some of these characters. So it's super cool. Anyway, let's not leave me rambling on too much. Let's get right into what you're here for, the interview with Marvel Comics writer Jed MacKay.
Going?
It is going well. How are you?
It's not too bad. It's weird weather in Halifax. Is it raining over there?
Yeah, it started to. It's not like, it's weird. We got the freezing rain early, and then like my neighbor was out shoveling his driveway, which I thought was odd because there wasn't much snow on it. And then and then now it's starting to rain, so I think it'll all probably be gone by morning, most likely.
Yeah, I'm just hoping it's not gonna get all icy again.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be fairly warm in the next few days, but I don't know. The weather is pretty hard to predict in this part of the world.
Yeah, especially this year, it seems.
Yeah, it's been weird. I mean, I've only had to really shovel, I think, like twice, but like one was real bad, which was like last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever that big storm hit.
Yeah, that was a lot of shoveling there. Like, it's also weird because we had a super early winter storm, and then just the weather was like, yeah, JK,
Yeah, basically, and especially now that it's been like 0 plus, like it was +1 out here, or +2 or something earlier. So like in middle of February, it's pretty crazy, to think the weather can go up to that high at this point. Because I don't remember it ever being, doing
Oh
that
yeah.
before. I don't want to get into that, like, oh, back in my day we had snow hills up in, both ways to school in a snowstorm, but something to that effect that, people talk about global warming, but I don't know, man, it feels like it's a lot warmer this year than has been any other.
Oh yeah. Like I think 2 weeks ago, I think we were down walking the dog and it's 8 degrees or 10 degrees or something like that. And
Yeah, it's
beginning of
insane.
February. Yeah, it's wild.
In the middle of February, it's crazy.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, so how are things?
things are going well. It's
Yeah,
busy, keeping pretty
yeah,
busy these days.
yeah. So you do more than just write, right? You a teacher as well, or is that something that was not updated on online?
I'm not a teacher anymore.
Okay.
I was a teacher up until not last November, but November before.
Oh, okay.
So the summer before last, my jobs all kind of started to come in at once, and
Mm,
it got to the point where I had to make the choice if I was going to keep teaching and write on the side, or if I could just devote all my time to writing.
mhm.
And the way it kind of worked out that I figured I had enough work, and my wife got out of freelance, and so then we would have dental through her job and no longer my jojob. So
Oh,
it
excellent.
just, yeah, all the pieces kind of came together to go full time freelance.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So yeah,
You,
it's just
in,
been
I was
been
gonna say, you got
about,
into teaching at the right time.
yeah, it was like I got out in November, and then COVID crashed down everything in what, March.
Yeah,
So
it was around March. Yeah. So do you have like a great, like, oh, thank God I did that sort of moment when that all started happening?
oh yeah, I mean, if I had to be teaching on Zoom all day, it'd be a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't know how people can do that. I mean, I have the utmost respect for teachers regularly, because
Hmm.
especially with classrooms the size they are now in schools in this area, and how many kids they have to go through, it's a lot. So to do that and try to keep them all together and focused on Zoom seems insane to me.
Oh yeah, it's wild. Like I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and just kind of checking in on them and see how they're doing. And yeah, it's taking a tough job, making it even tougher.
Oh, for sure. What did you teach? Like high school or grade or like elementary?
I was working at private school, Maritime Muslim Academy,
Oh, right.
and
Yes. Yeah.
I was teaching basically grades 7 to 10. So we only had one class for each grade. So yeah, I was teaching English, social studies, art, computer, gym, which was a laugh. Uh, and like just kind of bits and bobs here and there. I was teaching African Canadian Studies 11 for a bit. I was teaching Global History 12 for a bit. Just kind of like a pretty broad swath of stuff. So it's basically anything that would fall under the kind of liberal arts umbrella plus gym.
So how did you, like, that must be a much different environment than the state. Did you ever teach in the public system, or did you go straight into private teaching private school?
Uh, Not for lack of trying.
Okay.
Uh, I got my BEd in 2012 at Mount St. Vincent,
Hmm.
and that was a particularly bad time to try to be a teacher in Halifax. So I ended up working at like a superstore for a year. Uh, that didn't really I didn't really see a lot of career advancement in the produce department,
At the superstore? No, I can't imagine
uh,
that.
given the student loans I had to pay off. So yeah, went over to China for a year. I worked at an international school there. Came back. I was in Montreal for a year doing some subbing up there, and then finally decided to come back to Halifax. And then eventually I got on with MMA.
Oh, right on. So were you married at this time?
Nope, nope.
Okay, I was going to say, just take off for China for a year. It sounds like something that might be difficult to do if you had a spouse until.
No, yeah, we just got married a little over 2 years ago now.
Oh, right on. Well,
So
welcome to the club.
living the dream.
So you're from PEI originally, right?
Yep, yep.
Oh, what part?
Stanley Bridge, so it's just outside of Cavendish.
Oh, excellent. I love Cavendish.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I worked at Rainbow Valley for something like 7 years, 7 summers in a row. So yeah, I've got a lot of affection for kind of weird chintzy tourist bullshit.
Did you ever watch? Did you catch the CBC series Cavendish, the one that the guys from Picnic Face did, Andrew Bush and Mark Little?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid, especially like they filmed it there as well, I believe.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was. It was really funny where they would have things in Cavendish that didn't exist. It'd be like Cavendish General Hospital,
mhm.
and I think it like must have been filmed in like Summerside or something.
Yeah, I noticed that too while watching it. Because I mean, I think most of it took place in the Ripley's Museum that you guys have there, right? It's like was sort of the focus of it,
Yeah, it wasn't the Ripley's Museum, but it was like kind of something
made to
like
look like
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, like it's an auditorium or like a collection of curiosities.
yeah.
Um,
Like when they were in the town or the city or whatever, I could tell it was Charlottetown.
oh yeah, for sure.
And stuff like that, which was pretty neat. And it was a deeply Canadian show, with references to Fred Penner and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was a lot of fun. It's something that kind of it felt like it was very focused to me directly. So
yeah, I think people from PEI probably felt like it was definitely zeroing in on their sort of area for
in
sure.
the I got on that Alpha Flight one shot a while back
Hmm.
and set it in Cavendish. And the opening lines is that Alpha Flight was originally in Cavendish to deal with the Beast, which was obviously the Beast from the Cavendish TV show.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a nice little nod. I actually I do some acting and I auditioned for that show to play the doctor character, and
Oh, nice.
I was quite disappointed that I didn't get it because he gets a lot of really fun little things here and there throughout the
Yeah,
show.
he gets a lot of good bits.
He does, yeah. And like he's just sort of this weird sort of like you don't know what he is, like as a weird sort of doctor, but he's into all these weird things and he's popping up in different places and having these weird connections. So I thought it was a fun character. It was a deep regret that I didn't get it, but I'm assuming that show is not coming back because was on the air a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
I don't think so. Yeah,
That sucks.
was it just one season?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a shame. I imagine everyone's kind of moved on to something else at this point. But yeah, no, I really liked it. I mean, it's one of the things about being from the Maritimes when you see something that or you recognize or like have something happen in a place that you live in or like is near you.
Mhm.
It's always very exciting because like nothing is ever set here.
Oh, absolutely. Especially like Nova Scotia, yeah, the Maritimes specifically. I mean, there are a few things that seem to do well globally that are Canadian here and there, but there's few things. I mean, with the exception of Trailer Park Boys, I guess, which was a big one. But from this area, you're right. Like there were shows in Newfoundland that did okay. I think there's a few that were filmed there.
Yeah,
And Halifax has obviously quite a few things. I think Digstown is doing really well right now.
yeah. It sounds like it.
Yeah, I actually auditioned for that the other day as well. Also for a lawyer character. All these, I keep getting auditions for parts that don't look like I should play them.
Like
Like,
real white collar roles.
yeah, we need I'm like a 245-pound, like balded, bearded man, and they're like, yeah, that guy looks like a Crown attorney. Let's get him in here. It's like I can look at what the role is and be like, there's no way in hell. And I'm like, I'll shave my beard, whatever you guys want, but I don't look like the average attorney, so I don't think it's I just hope someone can someday I'll get something that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, like we need someone to play Jason Aaron.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I've it's funny. You're the first in the comic world to tell me that, but I've noticed that because I'm a big fan of his work. I've noticed that I do resemble him quite a lot. So I pop the glasses off him and off of me, and we could be brothers.
And you have the inevitable biopic somewhere down the line.
Yeah, for sure. So just outside of Cavendish, what was life like as a kid for you? What were you up to?
I mean, it was a pretty like it wasn't a real crazy existence. We lived out in the country.
What'd your folks
Uh,
do?
my mom's a nurse. My dad was a graphic designer. So
Oh, excellent. That's my general job.
yeah, so I mean, we just kind of hung out in the country a lot, really. Like not that, Charlottetown's not exactly a big city, but that was a big city to us when we were kids. So
Mhm.
we'd stay, we'd read a lot of books, read a lot of comic books, for that matter.
What was your go-tos as a kid?
Well, I would always read my dad's old books.
Hmm.
I got like 3 or 4 Rubbermaids of his old comics from the '70s.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
So that was kind of like my foundational comics text. Is like in the '90s, I wasn't reading '90s comic books because you have to pay money to buy them.
Yeah.
Whereas Dad'd be like, "Oh, you got these piles of comic books right here. Just read those."
And arguably equally, if not better, stories. I mean, you didn't the '90s. You missed the Clone Saga and what Batman being replaced by Azrael.
Yeah,
So
I remember Azrael turning up and thinking, "Wow, that's an exciting looking guy."
yeah, well, he was so like a painfully 90s character. Like I remember looking back at that issue because I was going through some of my old comics the other day, the sort of gatefold issues where they had a part
Right.
cut out and it would swap out the old Batman with the new one with all the spikes and the leg the leg pouches and all these things that wholly came out of like Image's sort of Youngblood area. So I remember seeing that with the spikes and the gauntlets and everything and thinking like, wow, what a wonderful depiction of the way characters were in the 90s.
I know, but I mean, I remember seeing that as a kid in the '90s and thinking it was the hottest shit in the
Oh
world.
yeah, me too, for sure. It's like when they put Nightwatch in Spider-Man, who's just a blatant ripoff off Spawn. I was like, man, this guy looks so cool. And it's just like
Yeah, I had
so
that.
90s.
What what issue is that? The Spider Armor one that had
Yeah,
the
that
Night
was
Watch backup and things.
200. That was it would have the green holofoil cover, right? When he first
Yeah,
had the
yeah.
spider armor. Yeah.
So
It was
Web of Spider Man.
yeah, it was. And it was like the enforcers were the villains, but they were like they expanded their launch to like there's like 50 members or something. And they're
Yeah,
all
it was
these
like
random villains.
like the Eel and
Yeah, yeah, I forgot about the eel.
Dragon Man, the Vanisher. Yeah,
Yes.
I love
Man,
that issue. Got that one
good
on
memory.
Ramsey's Pharmacy and Kensington P.E.I.
It was certainly as the 90s kid, reading comics, that cover, the holofoil new spider armor. And it's funny because it's marketed like this is what Spider-Man is now. And then like by the end of the issue, even he loses the armor and it's just gone forever. It's like frozen off, and he's like, nope, that's done.
Yeah, I remember just being like so excited to get this. I'm like, this is such good value. There's so many characters in this.
Yeah, for sure. There was like a ridiculous, like it was kind of around the time period too, and maybe I'm misremembering this, but I don't even know if that's word. But the like those lenticular covers they had where they were like red, black, green for each of the Spider-Man titles, and they had the little card in the center with the kind of holofoil Spider-Man in different pose.
I don't remember those. I only remember they did that with X-Men around the same time.
Yeah, the Fatal Attraction series.
Yeah, Fatal Attraction. Oh man, like I mean, I still look at those covers and I send them to my dad, who you're a graphic designer, you know, about like how much I love how gonzo they went with like desktop publishing typography on those covers. They had, like, 4 different fonts and they're like stretched all the shit, and they're just like really dramatic shit, like was it like Home Now the Warrior, Cable's Lament or something like that.
Yeah, very Shakespearean. Like they really tried to up the fact, like trying to up this the poshness of it, I guess, like the upscale it with the sort of flowery language that they never really got since Stan Lee left.
Yeah, it's like the 90s kind of callback to like this man, this monster kind of stuff. But the Fatal Attractions logo was so good. It had like the T's and attractions had like the positive and the negative poles on them, and it was great.
Yeah, if you like as a graphic designer, if you want to go back and look at like some really clever like logo work, just look at old comic. Some of the old comic logos for some of those characters were just amazing, and some of those event stuff too, like totally amazing. And that's back in the day when graphic design wasn't like fonts on a computer, like not quite to the extent that it is now. Like you really had to work and come up with some original stuff to get that sort of thing. So there's a lot of kudos to those designers back in the day.
Yeah, and it's something I'm always very interested in with that. There's a real exuberance to people using these tools for in early days when the techniques weren't particularly ironed out, or like the aesthetic wasn't really figured out. Like you see it a lot in like specifically 90s Shadowrun books, like the and like they're just going gonzo with it. They're having fun. They're trying to figure it out, and it's really interesting the kind of first these kind of baby steps of doing using desktop publishing tools when the rules haven't been figured out yet.
Yeah, exactly. You're right to describe it as sort of that gonzo style when there weren't any rules. People were just sort of making up as they went along.
Yeah, like see this line, make this line another font, and let's just stretch it so it fits the page. Does it distort the letters? Of course it does.
But who cares?
Exactly.
Shut up, nerd. Let's just put this to print.
Yeah.
It's like I see some of those memes and stuff that are like just designer ones that pop up on things that are like, how to make a designer cry, like stretch a font and all these sort of things. And like I work in a sign shop a few days a week as well, on top of just I have my own business. And
Right.
every time someone wants to stretch some font or put a white outline around something, it just makes like my head just a little part of me dies inside. But it's just sort of the way it is. You got to make people happy.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're the people who got to live with it.
Exactly. It's funny because I often make that joke when doing logos for people. It's like I'll do 5 that I love, like, and then like the 6th one I'll just throw in to give them a 6th option, and then they're like, I love that 6th one, and I'm like, really? That's the one, it's like nothing, but that's the one they want. So
It never fails.
It's never the one I expect them to take. Never.
Yeah.
But that's, I think that's probably every industry has its own sort of little pet peeves, and I think that's probably a major one in graphic design.
Yeah, I mean, that's the game.
That's the game. That's cool though that we're probably relatively the same age. How old are you?
37.
Oh, 35. So we're close. So yeah, we were both buying those. I worked at a store when I was a kid in Antigonish.
Okay.
In the Antigonish Mall that sold comics and magic cards and that sort of stuff. So I used to read a lot, like in high school around that time. I was actually, the one thing I remember the most around probably when I was 15, 16 was Grant Morrison's X-Men had just come out then. And that was what me and all the friends were reading. Like it was that every time a new issue came out, we were like super pumped.
Yeah, that was, I didn't read that when I was coming out because I wasn't reading a lot of superhero books around that time, but I was buying enough comics at the short-lived comic shop in Kensington that I would get Previews magazine for free. So I always knew what was coming out. I would never I usually wouldn't buy the books, but I remember when new X-Men was coming out, they're making a big deal about previews. Like when Ultimates was coming out, they're making a big deal out of it in previews and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because they had a different sort of. It was like an Ultimate Marvel magazine or something. They used to have clips, like pieces of the Ultimate comics in them. It may be single issues, I think, to try to get people into the comics.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, just as far as because previews is just there to.
Yeah, for sure.
Get people to order the books, but it's always an interesting slice to go through those giant catalogs and just see what was coming out and what people are interested in back then.
Yeah, for sure. I never keep those just for space, but I probably should have. It would have been cool to go back and look at, what was the big thing at the time when I was really young. Because where I grew up, there wasn't a comic store. It was Antigonish. Right. And so superhero comics is all you really could get at the store, which is more of a hobby store, that had a magazine rack essentially with comics. So I didn't really know a lot of what was out there. It was all just back when Marvel would put in the order forms in the back, and you could see some of the other comics around and that sort of thing. But and the occasional ads for catalogs for book companies that sold Marvel trades through them, and you'd see ones that I'd never heard of. A standout for me was the Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom team up. I remember seeing that ad a lot.
Oh yeah. The Oath.
The Mephisto one, right?
Yeah. And I keep always think that one's the Oath, but it's not. That's the.
No, that's
the Brian K. Vaughan one.
Yes, that's right. That's the solo Brian K. Vaughan one. Yeah, no, that was way back. It was like the fight for Doom's mom's soul.
Yeah. That kind of laid out the tournament to become Sorcerer Supreme with Shanti.
Right. Yes, I think Clea played into that too.
Shit, what was it called? Something and something.
Torment. Something in Torment, wasn't it?
Yeah, Triumph Torment.
Triumph and Torment. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I totally remember that. I think since it's funny when you're when you get to an age now where you kind of run into a lot of these things that you I have a copy of that now, but I remember it was something I wanted to read for a very long time, and just to come across it in a $5 bin somewhere as an adult. Peter David's Hulk books. I remember always thinking I wanted to get those, but could never find them anywhere. And I came across one the other day, and I was like the red cover one with him on. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
It's also, as an adult, you're like, well, shit, I can actually afford to buy this, so
for sure.
I will.
Yes, too much of that in my in my experience. Lately, I get in rabbit holes with certain creators. I'm on a real John Byrne kick lately.
Okay.
So I've been they've recently been putting out his Man of Steel stuff in hardcovers, and I've been gobbling those up.
Yeah, I feel like the only Byrne I've read is his Alpha Flight stuff.
Is his what?
Alpha Flight stuff.
Oh yeah, I have a collection of that as well. His She-Hulk stuff I was a big fan of when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the precursor to what Dan Slott did with having a fun sort of fourth wall breaking She-Hulk.
Right.
which was, really fun to me. And I think the TV show they're planning on doing is going to lean that way, which is pretty great in my opinion. So
I think so. Yeah. From what I can tell, with a lot of the Marvel cinematic stuff, I'm just kind of like, well, I guess we'll see when it comes out.
yeah, like does that play? I mean, I definitely want to go back and go through what made you to comics, but does that play into what you do? Like, do they like? Is there any push for the industry or for Marvel specifically to want you to do things based on what they're doing in the shows anymore? Because I remember back in the day, it seemed to used to be a really prominent thing. Like if they changed a character or costume, it happened in the comics, and they look like Star-Lord looks like Star-Lord in the movies,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, is that do you like when you send in scripts? They're like, well, we're doing something with the show, make them look this way or do this with them. Is that something that plays into it, or?
Kind of yes and no.
Mhm.
I think in my experience, I've had like the books I've been working on have been influenced by larger events or more expensive events, but only in the fact that they exist in the first place. Like my first series, Daughters of the Dragon, came about because they're doing digital first series for all the Netflix characters.
Okay.
Like beyond that, there was no real push to make it like the TV characters. It's just they said these characters are out there, they're being pushed. It's kind of a big deal for Netflix. So we're going to take this time and do like a Luke Cage digital series, do an Iron Fist digital series, do a Daughters digital series, do a Jessica Jones digital
Mhm.
series.
Oh, cool.
Similarly, my Taskmaster book right now, it only exists because the Black Widow movie is coming out.
Right.
So originally it was supposed to start the same month the movie came out, and then well, I mean we all know how that shook out.
Mm-hmm. Still
So
shaking it.
yeah, at a certain point they're just like we're just going to get the series going because it's about time.
Oh, right on. So they just said, let's just put it out because the movie was delayed for so long.
Yeah, and I mean like it still doesn't have a solid release date as far as I know.
No, it doesn't.
So
I think
yeah,
they're saying everything's in November now, but who knows?
yeah, exactly. So at least by then they'll have a trade paperback with Taskmaster featuring the Black Widow around the time the film comes out.
Oh, very cool. Oh, that answers that. So did you went to school? You said you finished school in 2012 to be a teacher?
Yeah, that's the second go round in
I was
my
going to say,
field.
what was the first go round?
I went to Mount Allison. I was there from 2001 to 2005.
Mhm.
So yeah, I studied English and classics. Then I graduated, and it turned out that an English degree doesn't actually open a whole lot of doors. Is a real shocker.
It's like that philosophy degree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not quite as bad, but
No, I feel like
but
those sort of career choices generally lead towards teaching, do they not?
I mean, generally, yes.
Yeah.
So after that, I went to Korea for a couple of years of teaching English. Made a good friend who had a philosophy degree over there, who was also teaching.
Oh, wonderful.
And yeah, was in Korea for a couple of years, then Montreal for a couple of years, then finally decided to go and become a teacher, and then I moved to Halifax about 10 years ago.
Oh, right on. So were the comics just something in the back of your mind that you always thought about doing and just didn't take seriously until later in life, or is it something that was the school choice like I guess like a survival thing, just get you something to get you out there? Or
I mean, that's kind of the thing, and like I grew up reading comics like mainly Marvel and DC stuff,
Mhm.
and when I was a little older in high school, I got a lot more into just like indie stuff.
What stuff are you reading
Both,
then?
both old and new. Um, like I got really into like digging up the old like black and white Ninja Turtle stuff.
Oh, so good.
I was really keen on. Um, uh, Sort of an interesting formative text was the Halifax explosion, the comic Strange Adventures put out way back in the 90s.
Okay.
I got that as a kid, and I think it's like one of the first times I'd seen a comic book that wasn't like a slick professional product. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, this is actually something that anybody can do. Like
Mhm.
anybody. Like when you grow up as a kid in the Maritimes, you think anything that's of any consequence media wise takes place not here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Usually in the States, and like the people who make these things are not from here. And then when I read that book, it was really kind of an eye opener for me as a kid. I'm like, I could make comics, and I don't have to be from somewhere else to do it. So I was really kind of keen on this idea of like making comics, and like at the time I thought I was going to draw them. it became pretty apparent that I couldn't draw well enough or fast enough. But around the time I went to university, I got involved with a lot of the message boards and stuff that were online for comic people.
Oh yes.
Because this would have been like starting in 2001, and
Yeah.
that was before we had any sort of social media or Reddit or what have you. And
Yeah.
message boards was just kind of how you did it, and it was great. I was on a board called André. Perhaps some of the most notable graduates. James Stocco was on there, Marley Zarkon, and then Sheldon Vella, who is an Australian illustrator. We kind of hooked up. So I started writing the scripts, and he would draw them. We just kind of like make, shitty, crass comics.
Mm-hmm.
And
What were they about?
they're just like sort of violent comedy, sort of anachronistic.
Yeah.
Anachronistic. Jeez.
I know. I hear you. Anarchy, basically, is what you're saying.
Anachronistic, kind of historical hijinks kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
yeah, like it was very silly. Like the protagonist would go and like try to repossess a cow from a farmer in Thailand, or get into like a fight with some samurai somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was. I mean, the art was good. The writing was pretty bad. But anyways, over the years, we were kind of like trying to make our push to get into doing comics for some actual money, and Sheldon kind of like went off and he did his own things. He was a great artist. He was in demand. He was working with that Coheed and Cambria guy on some stuff.
Oh, really? Wow.
He had a Zuda series for a while, and Marvel brought him in to do some like shorts for anthology books, and they brought him in to do one for X-Men Serve and Protect, which was like a 4-issue anthology series where an X-Men character would be teamed up with a non-X-Men character and then have like an adventure for 8 pages. And Sheldon was like, great, I got the industry job. He's like, but I don't actually know any of these characters or what to do with any of them. So he brought me in to write it for him. So that was the first Marvel job I had, but basically my first actual comics job back in 2010.
So was that something where he would have to approach Marvel and say, listen, I want my friend to write this? And they're okay with that? Much. Or is it like a ghostwriting thing?
No. Like I was there in an official capacity.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was great.
That seems insane to me. Did you have to like submit anything for them to read, or just like they were just cool with whatever?
I mean, like I said, it was an anthology book, so they're interested in, I wouldn't say more experimental things, but they were
more open to.
Yeah, exactly. More open to that kind of thing.
Oh, very cool. Did they give them the characters to use, or is that something that you got to choose?
No, we just picked them. It was a Dazzler teaming up with Dodge the Dragon.
Oh, that's a great combo.
Yeah, so I was like, this seems like a fun thing.
Yeah, they both had their origins in a very 70s-ish sort of style, so that's actually a really cool pairing.
Yeah, and it was like a roller skate race battle in space, and it was,
awesome.
It was extremely silly, but it was a lot of fun. And actually, last year I bought the first page from that story, so I have the original art for the first page, the first story ever.
Oh, that's super cool.
So yeah, we did that, and like, man, this is gonna be it. Like, I'm in. And then basically heard nothing for 4 more years.
Do you have like a contact at that point, like your publisher that you can hit up, or is it? I know like, you don't want to like bother people, but just in a way that.
I had a contact with the editor I worked with.
Yeah.
But at the time, it's just another schmo who did 8 pages. It's not exactly a priority for people to get in contact with. But so yeah, 4 years later, the same editor got back to Sheldon and I. It's like, hey, we're doing another anthology book for Spider-Verse. Back the first time they did the Spider-Verse go around.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this punk Spider-Man. We don't know anything about him. Why don't you guys do 8 pages and give him like a little backstory or something?
Yeah, I think that's where I first read a story by you. Was that one?
Yeah, it was.
I'm a big Spider-Man guy, so I just buy a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it was the Spider-Punk one. It's got the guitar, and the cops are all kitted out in Venom suits.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun, and it was like people seemed to like it. It was pretty well received. I was like,
the cool thing about that Spider-Verse stuff is that you can Like, especially when they give you like one of these other parallel universe versions of Spider-Man, because you can just do whatever you want, right? I assume that the gloves are off if you're doing an alternate universe Spider-Man. You can play with everything.
Yeah, I mean, like within a certain degree, like
I suppose, yeah.
we took that Spider-Man, like we made him Hobie Brown and not Peter Parker, and we had to censor the art because I wrote in the script that Osborn gets hit in the head with a guitar, and Sheldon had his like brain coming out of his mouth. So they had to put like a big kind of like censorship box over it.
Oh, really?
Because it was a little too far for Marvel standards for that.
Yeah, maybe just a tad. I mean, the gore doesn't seem to be as big a
Not as big a draw anymore.
No, not for them anyway. It's not a Walking Dead comic or anything.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we did that, and we're like, okay, we got it made. Like, we're gonna parlay this well-received story into maybe like a mini series or like a one shot or something. And then they didn't hear anything for another 4 years, until they're doing Spider-Geddon and said, we're gonna do a one shot with Spider-Punk character. What do you got? And Sheldon was too busy to do it, but I was, like, yeah, absolutely, I'll write a whole issue. And that was the first full issue I did.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
it must have been great to get the full issue after kind of a few false starts over, an 8-year period.
Yeah, over the that 10 years.
Yeah.
Because like through that time, I'd kind of just given up on comics.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I'm always going to write stuff. I started trying to do like prose stuff. Like I wrote a novel that no one wanted to publish. I wrote like a ton of short stories. Never really got any traction, but it's just something to have, and you learn from doing the writing. So when it finally came up that I was getting more work, and then that one shot got me Daughters of the Dragon, because I think they had some people online for it, but it just didn't work out, and they needed to turn it around really quickly. And then Daughters of the Dragon was pretty well received. I got Man Without Fear, and then Ghost Panther, and then from those I got Black Cat.
Yeah, which is still going, correct?
Yep. Next issue comes out next week.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, that's quite the journey.
Yeah, it was like an overnight success, a decade in the making.
Yeah, I think there's some quote which I'm not going to remember at all about, takes 10 years to be an overnight success or something like that, or 5 years. I can't remember. It's a long.
It certainly is the case.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So for something like Black Cat, for instance, is that something that they come to you and say, hey, we have a Black Cat comic, do you want to do it? Or do you pitch what projects you want to work on to them, or how does that work?
So for someone at my kind of level, no one's really that interested in what I have to like. It's like, hey guys, I got an idea for blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's more, they've got a project ready to go, and they say, well, who do we like for this? And then the editors will look at who the people they've worked with or like books they like and say, okay, I think this person would be good for it. We'll get in touch with them. Okay. Black Cat came about that way. Nick is the Spider-Man editor. He really liked Daughters. He he put it together, and we built it together. And he's like, well, listen, we can't do another Daughters of the Dragon series. It's just it's fiscal suicide. But
yeah,
I've got this Black Cat book that we want to do, spinning out of events of Nick Spencer's Spider-Man, and we think that'd be a great fit for you. Bring that kind of same energy, the same humor, same action. They got Travel Foreman to draw it again. Travel had done 4 out of the 6 Daughters of the Dragon issues.
Oh, wonderful.
Even got Farron Delgado to letter it again. So Black Cat was kind of born from the pretty good reception of Daughters of the Dragon at the Marvel offices.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, especially if it's a female-centric series and you're already shown that you can write, the female characters well.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I would say so. If it's continued on to the level it has.
Yeah, if not, I've really been struggling for the past 15 issues or so.
Yeah, I actually really liked what Spencer had done with Black Cat, because I was a big fan of Dan Slott's run, and towards the end when they just sort of had a hate on for Spider-Man again because of the Superior Spider-Man stuff, I was happy to see it kind of get back to more, when he gives her closure on his identity and all those sort of things that sort of brought her back to more aligned to where she was before. I thought that was a nice course correction.
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well. I think it was a pretty elegant way to kind of tie the knot on that storyline and be ready to move forward with something new.
For sure. Spencer's run in general, I've been a fan of as well. I know I the one thing I dislike in modern comics, and I'm sure you probably can comment on this, is whenever, like, say I'm just following Spider-Man and I'm enjoying the regular Spider-Man book, and then something like Maximum or Minimum Carnage or whatever the last Carnage, Absolute Carnage was, and then all of a sudden it cuts into your comic, and then like there's all these sidelines that if I'm not buying all the other books, I can't follow.
Right.
Yeah, I find that quite distracting, and there seems to be a lot of them as of late in modern comics.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting kind of challenge to deal with sometimes.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, like, as a writer, do you feel that like in the middle of a story and they throw this at you and say, look, you have to do a tie-in with whatever? I don't know if you've come across this yet, but does that throw a real gear into what you have planned, or is it just sort of we'll put that on pause, deal with this, and then come back to what I've been doing?
Well, it's only happened once, and it was kind of a unique situation with Black Cat. Like Absolute Carnage passed us by. It wasn't a big deal. Empire passed us by, but we were on hiatus after issue 12 due to COVID, and so there's a few. Well, I think it was like 3 or 4 months when we just didn't have a book coming out. We only got back in publication December. But basically, I was waiting to hear back of like when we're going to start Black Cat up again. Because I think I had five scripts in the can, I think, at that point in time, and like art was already started on a couple of them.
So during the shutdown, were you just writing? Is that like to fill the time?
No, actually, it was just before the shutdown. It would have been January, I think. We were just like I was just cranking out scripts because it was just you get on a hot streak. Yeah,
for sure. And at that point, you'd become like this is your full-time gig, basically. So.
Yeah, and I knew the book wasn't being canceled immediately, so I had a little time to kind of build up for the future.
For sure.
But we're on hiatus, and I eventually got the call saying, "All right, we're going to start back up again, but with a couple of provisos. First is that it's going to be a new number 1. It's not going to be number 13 as we planned. The second is that before we get back to what was originally number 13, is now going to be number 4." And 1, 2, and 3 are going to be a King in Black tie-in.
Okay.
So, starting a book again with the new number 1 in a crossover, it can kind of go one of two ways. Where either people can be really thrown off by it, or people are going to, be excited by that energy of this event and pick up this book as it's tying in. Which I think it's been doing pretty well. People seem to like it. But having to do an event tie-in, especially as a new number 1, presented like a real set of challenges.
I would imagine because everything they have planned for that, the core series and all the other people that have spin-off things related to it, like to not step on anyone's toes or do anything they're doing and keep some, it must be a hell of a coordination effort.
It was. I mean, like there's when I got that call, and I was later sent the email, like I had Donnie's outline for the stuff that was happening through the main series of King in Black and how it was going to tie into Venom. And there were some notes in how, the tie-ins and the spin-offs would link in with that. But my main concern was I had to do a new number 1. So you have to be friendly enough for new readers who haven't read the title before to, understand what's going on. They get what's happening, who these characters are, why they're doing what they're doing. It also had to give enough new stuff that the constant readers or what have you wouldn't feel like they're buying something that's kind of just a tutorial mission or whatever. And it also had to tell enough about what was happening in King of Black number 1 for anyone not reading that book to know what's going on, while also not just rehashing the events of King of Black number 1. So there's a real balancing act to that number 1 that was a really interesting challenge. It wasn't something I've had to do before. So at the end of it, I'm really happy with how it came out. I think this King of Black arc has been a really great opportunity. But yeah, at the beginning I was like, oh boy, I don't know how this is going to work.
Yeah, I imagine it's something that you probably will have to deal with in the future, because it seems like a lot of them, a lot of these events have been running across most. Especially, I guess King in Black is deeply Venom and kind of tied to Spider-Man and all that. So
I mean, it makes more sense than if Felicia had to deal with, like, I don't know, a Fantastic Four event or something.
Oh, for sure, something cosmic, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was like for Taskmaster, that was sort of a labor of love for you as well, was it? Because that was a character I think I recall talking to you about this at Giorgio's place one time about I don't know if you were working on that yet or not.
I don't I don't think I was,
A couple
'cause
years ago.
yeah, it would have been ECCE, but
Yeah.
was I, or
I don't remember. I thought I remember talking to
you
you
know
about
what? I
Taskmaster
wasn't.
specifically.
I
But
wasn't, but I have always liked Taskmaster.
yeah. So what was the draw to that character for you?
I mean, I think he's great. He's got this like great, ridiculous costume.
Yeah, I hate whenever they try to change it. Like I love that when you did your series, you brought him back to the old one, because whenever they try to cool it up and like, he had a mini series before where they sort of, it looked closer to what the movie one looks like now,
Yeah,
where it was like blue and gray, right?
yeah, the Udon suit, which was I remember being very big on the internet around like 2002, 2003 when it was coming out,
Yeah.
and but a lot of people like it, and that's fine. It's just it's not for me. I find that the theatricality and the ridiculousness of his costume
Oh, for sure.
is really reflective of what I like about the character.
Yeah, I dig it as well. I think my first experience with him was I was a big Mark Bagley art fan when I was a kid, like
Right.
still am. But like when he was doing Amazing Spider-Man, they had a comic with Taskmaster in it where Spider-Man and Black Cat, I believe, like encountered a bunch of kind of knockoff villains that were sort of knockoff of heroes. There was like a kind
Oh
of
yeah,
there was like a Hawkeye knockoff and a Spider-Man one.
Jagged Bow.
Yeah, that's right. What was Spider-Man's like Death Spider or something?
I think it was a Blood Spider.
Blood Spider. I think you're right.
Death Shield, I think.
Death Shield was the Captain America one. Yeah, I love how you just throw like some pronoun about like murder or death or killing in front of the name, and it just instant villain.
Yeah, Jagged Bow is my favorite because I was like, yeah, that's a hell of a name.
That is actually a pretty cool name, especially for throwaway characters that I don't think have ever showed up again.
Yeah, I had considered bringing them in for Taskmaster. I'm like, there's just no space for them.
Oh, maybe somewhere down the line. It'd certainly be a nice nostalgia nod to the like people in our age bracket for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm always stumping for another Taskmaster series, so maybe someday.
Well, maybe when the movie comes out, they'll tap you again because it'll be more in line with that. So
yeah, maybe when the movie comes out, when the movie eventually comes out, they'll be like, oh, we need a new Taskmaster series to put on the stands. The same reason we commissioned the first one.
Yeah, exactly. You just got a bonus one earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
So like when it comes to the cinematic side of things, I don't assume they give you any insight into those in a way that like if it would connect to, if they're trying to connect the books, there's nothing in a way they'd be like, we're going to do this or this character's going to show up. Can you throw them in the series?
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah, I didn't imagine there's synergy between the cinematic stuff and the books themselves where that connected.
I don't even know how much like editorial knows about what the events of the movies are going to be like, because I mean I certainly don't know.
Yeah, I talked to Nick Bradshaw about it one time, and just he was mentioning how he was at the office for something, and they had a bunch of stuff on the wall in a planning meeting that he just kind of looked at some of it, and but it was stuff way like we were talking about it way after it already happened in movies. But like he wasn't revealing anything he shouldn't have or anything like that. No. But I remember him saying, because we were talking about I think Guardians 2. And I was saying, do you know, like he said that there's a few names that were kicking around for who Star-Lord's father was. And I was like, can you tell me? And he's like, no. He goes, all I can tell you is it starts with like this, and it's a cosmic character. And that's it. And I was like, and I was like racking my brain trying to figure out what character it was. And I would message him every once in a while, I'd be like, is it this guy? He'd be like, nope. Is it this guy? He'd be like, nope. So they went with Ego anyway, which wasn't what he had thought it was. I guess originally one of the ideas was Jack of Hearts.
Jack of Hearts, wow.
Yeah, which would have been kind of cool in it, but it seems like the kind of character that James Gunn would use, like in a cosmic setting in Marvel, because he's such a fun, offbeat character that's sort of weird and would fit in kind of well.
Yeah, Jack of Hearts is one of those guys that just like
I don't think he's been back since Avengers Assembled, has he been?
I certainly doubt it.
I don't think so.
It just seems like he's one of those really strange characters that, like, I understand we all have our weird face. I just do not understand why people care about Jack of Hearts.
I don't know either. I was a big fan. I'm a big fan of Jim Starlin. So like anything that came out of his run on Silver Surfer and all that space stuff, like in anything from the Infinity Gauntlet, all that stuff is great. Like I just got the Is it the Infinity Crusade? Is that what they just put out, or is that the trade that's coming out?
Oh yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's out
it's
now.
fine.
Or the Infinity War, like all the stuff, even the stuff that wasn't that great comparative to like some of the stuff that was like genius. I still just lap up because I don't know why. I just really like his style of sort of space stories. So
Oh
characters
yeah,
that were sort of centered around that really, I don't know, they hold a special place in my heart. Like him and Morg, Terrax, like all those sort of guys.
yeah. So I loved the like Jim Starlin Warlock stuff. It's just so
Oh
good.
yeah,
It was
fantastic.
just it was such a saga. And, you got like Thanos in there getting his hands dirty, but like you never underestimate him. And Gamora and Pip and the Magus, who's just like completely insane looking. Yeah, that was such a good run.
Yeah, I agree. Like all that stuff. I'm excited. I know wherever the next Marvel movies go with the cosmic stuff, I guess Guardians is really it, unless they finally get Fantastic Four in there. Um, or I guess Eternals would kind of fit into that realm too, in the new Thor movie, I
It's
think.
it's relatively cosmic, the Eternals.
Yeah, so I think that'll probably fit in there. So anything that can show me more of that stuff, like watching Guardians and seeing the Celestials is like a real trip for the fanboy in me as a kid.
Yeah, that's a pretty exciting reveal there. Not even reveal, but it's like cameo.
Yeah, like anything. Like if you would have told me I'd see Rocket Raccoon in a movie, like he'd be a popular character in a live action movie, I would have been like, "You're crazy, like
Yeah,
insane."
he'd be on the he'd be on the Avengers in about
Yeah, yeah, like Groot. We got like even in the second one, we saw the sort of veiled nods to the original Guardians of the Galaxy with Stakar
yeah,
and Martin X and all that. I was fanboying hard. It's funny because my wife's not into comics like at all. She likes the
right.
movies and stuff. She just comes along. But like I'm like sitting there squealing about all the stupid shit that she has no idea what it's what it's about. Like, oh, it's the car. That's so cool. It's like, what? Who? What? Like, I'll tell you later. You won't
Yeah,
care, but I'll tell you later.
yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. It only matters to me and probably one other person in this theater.
Yeah,
But it's quite an age for like anything and everything to get its platform really right now, especially with Marvel.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems a lot of strange corners are getting their time in spotlight. Like I remember just before we went to China, so like 2012, 2013. They announced they're gonna make a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I was like, are you fucking serious? A Guardians of the Galaxy movie?
Mhm.
It's like, man, it's gonna bomb so hard, it's gonna crack a tectonic plate. Like, whose genius idea was that? And then it was
Yeah.
like one of their biggest films.
Oh, for sure. And like just propelled all these characters into spotlights that they were never even close to being in
Yeah.
before. I mean, at
It's
that
like
point, I think the Annihilation stuff in the comics was a big deal, but that was like the biggest that any of those characters probably got the attention.
even then, like Annihilation was like I remember people talking about Annihilation like 2007.
Yeah.
It's like there have been a couple rounds of Annihilation at that point, like
Yeah. Two
Annihilation,
or three. Yeah.
Annihilation Contact or Conquest, War of Kings and stuff.
Mhm.
And like, I was really keen on Annihilation and like seeing the cosmic stuff that spun out of it. But yeah, certainly didn't think that's where they were going to look for the next movie.
Oh, for
But
sure. Like the end of
worked
the
out for him.
Avengers, when you saw Thanos, I was like, that made me, because he's always been my favorite villain,
Yeah,
because of the Starling connection. And I was so happy, like beyond happy. And then seeing everything they did up till now, it's just been a real treat to me, like as far as a comic fan. So
yeah. I mean that's how I saw it when I was watching the first season of Daredevil. I saw like Stiltman's pants.
yeah,
I
ditto.
was
Yeah.
like, if someday maybe someday.
Even seeing gladiators like spikes on the wall or like the blades on the wall, I was like,
Saws,
that's
yeah.
cool. Yeah, like, and those little nods. I'm really hoping. I mean, it's been confirmed that Charlie Cox is going to be in the Spider-Man movie, right?
I
I
don't know.
think. I don't know. There's so much stuff coming out so fast now. It's hard to keep track of it all.
Yeah, but
Uh,
also like if you're plugged into like nerd comic book Twitter bullshit,
yeah.
uh, the barest hint of a rumor gets reported on as fact. And it's just
Oh,
like,
instantly. Yeah. So I try to take a lot of it with a grain of salt, but it's tough to keep track.
oh yeah,
So was Daredevil like a treat as well? Like, was he a favorite character? Was he in that list, that box of 70s comics your dad sort
yeah,
of passed
yeah.
down to you?
I mean, that's where I read Stillman versus Daredevil. So yeah, getting the chance to do Man Without Fear was a lot of fun. It was a real gear shift in that
Mhm.
most of the stuff I would usually do was kind of jokey and fun.
Mhm.
And they're like, you want to do a series where it's like 5 issues of Daredevil sitting in a hospital bed? Like I'll make it work. I'll figure it out somehow. But yeah, it was good. It was a really different experience. I feel like I learned a lot from.
Hmm.
It was a weekly book, so I had to get a script in pretty much every weekend while I was
Oh,
teaching.
that's crazy.
So like, and then had four different artists working on it, and so you're just always pages coming in and always making sure everything works, and then the lettering drafts come in. So it's pretty nonstop process for that month, a month and
Oh,
a
for
half.
sure. Do you find you gravitate towards comedy more than any of the serious stuff, or is it just something that comes naturally to
Generally,
you?
yeah. I just like to have fun with my books, Um, generally, if I can put a joke in, I will. Um, it's not to say that I don't think I can do serious work,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of temptation to slip back into this like everything's horrible, grim and gritty kind of thing. When
Yeah,
it's
did
like, no,
you?
like, comic
That's
books should be fun.
yeah, that's kind of where I was heading because I was wanting your opinion on that sort of thing. Like, um, I mean, lately it's been a real nod to everyone talking about the Snyder Cut and all this thing for Justice League coming out, which is like DC's big thing,
Mhm.
and like this sort of the dark and gritty. And I'll just look at comments like, and I know the comments you should stay away from on the internet
Yeah, I
for
mean, you should know
sure.
better than that by
Oh,
now.
I don't go deep. I usually just read the first two or three just to see how far you have to go before it
Yeah,
gets into like a complete like mismatch of people just screaming at each other or calling each other names. So like somebody comments like, "Oh, Marvel hasn't made a good movie. Like everything's too bright and fun, and there's too many jokes, and they're not funny, and like get into the serious darkness of the DC universe and all that stuff." And I'm like, "What? Like those movies are terrible." like like teach their own. If you enjoy the movies, fine, but like I don't need to see a gritty Superman. Like I get Batman, sure, but Superman should be like a symbol of brightness and hope to me. And like you get this movie where it's just like this sad like 2.5 hours of sadness and darkness, and it's like, man, this is not the Superman I want to see.
yeah. I mean, it's just as far as the whole Snyder Cut thing goes, I just don't want to ever hear about it again. Like
Oh
I don't want to
god,
hear
no, I'll be happy when it's done.
don't want to hear people getting like defending it. I don't want to hear people going after it. I'm just like, it's something I cared literally nothing about, and I
Yeah,
just don't want to hear about it.
no, I'm in that camp as well. Like I gave Superman a real shot, and then I watched the other ones as well, but to my opinion, they've just gotten grittier and grittier as Batman shooting people in the face, whatever. It's like I don't know. Like I get where he's going with it, like what he wants to do and what he want. Basically,
Yeah,
DC looked at the Dark Knight movies and were like, well, these are dark and gritty, and people like them, so let's just paint that everything with that brush. But it is
yeah.
harking back to like a time period in comics as well when
Oh, for
everything was
sure.
kind of painted with that brush.
I
So
mean, we go back to the glory days of our friend Nightwatch.
mhm. Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
When he died in the comic, in an offshoot in the Spider-Man comic,
yeah. Well,
it
I
was in the
mean,
Great Game. He got shot in the face. Like that was how they killed him.
he came back for She-Hulk though, and
Oh,
he had his whole story revised.
was what version of She-Hulk was that? Did I miss
That
this?
was Charles Soule one, I believe,
Oh, I did read that. How did I miss that?
because Ron Wimberly did a really crazy like Gatchaman style.
Right, right, right,
Design.
right. Right. I
But
forgot about that. That was cool. It's like he falls into that realm of 90s Spider-Man villains that I have that I'm fond about because I was reading them. Like Cardiac is another one that you don't see a lot of in the Marvel universe that I always really like.
has such a great look.
He did look cool, and he still like every once in a while they'll throw him in something very just off in the distance. It's like, man, same with Puma. Like I know he's older than the 90s, but
Yeah.
that was a character I always really liked as well. Just sort of the offshoot Spider-Man characters that don't get a lot of love.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time when they were really turning out a lot of interesting ancillary characters that
Yeah,
are
well,
just
probably
kind of
when they
like,
had 4 Spider-Man comics going at once, they had to do something to be
yeah,
different
yeah,
than each
you
other.
got to figure something out there. I
Yeah,
mean, not all of them are winners. Like, you got the answer, chance,
yeah, yes. Chance, he showed up recently again in the comics as well, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. He was in,
Yeah.
he was in ASM, and
Yes, and
then
Spencer's run.
the answer I don't think ever turned up again. He was the dopiest dude.
I feel like he did. Oh, he
Did he?
was the last time I remember seeing him was in I think it was like Lethal Foes of Spider-Man or one of those miniseries. He was like a ghost. It was like he had died already, and he was like
Okay.
he was like somehow reaching out from beyond the grave to reach out to people. But to
Yeah.
you, like as you're talking about your love of sort of the funner part of comic books and stuff, is that something that you like when it happened initially, like in the late 80s, early 90s? I guess we were both pretty young at the time, but like, and there's that real tonal shift because even like Fatal Attraction was a darker sort of series for the time period, right? With Magneto ripping out Wolverine's adamantium and
Oh yeah.
dying and everything. Like, is that something that you think there's too much of in comics? Like, it's just there's too much of a desire to turn everything dark and gritty.
I mean, I don't know if I go that far. Like, I mean, I remember when I was a kid in the 90s, you see that the shit, the gnarlier the better.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I think it's, I don't know if the adding, jokes and lighter stuff in books is necessarily my reaction to it,
Hmm.
but because I mean, I think that I think there's room in comics for a lot of different stuff.
Oh, for
You
sure.
can't,
Yeah.
it's very easy, you can do a grim and gritty story, and that's perfectly fine. I just feel like specifically in comics where you have so much, or well, specifically in superhero comics, I should say.
Yeah, I agree.
There are so many titles, and they're covering so many different parts of the universe that I think there's room for a bit of everything. And the thing I particularly like to do is have some moments of levity because
Yeah.
it makes it fun to write. And that's not to say every book needs to be a laugh-a-thon 24/7, but
No, but
it's
it's certainly, I agree with you. I think like a great example, in my opinion, would be like Garth Ennis's run on the Punisher. Like like his regular Marvel Universe run, not his Max run. Where they threw in like ridiculously black humor, but it like, and that's a place for that sort of humor in that sort of world.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like it makes sense in those, and it also breaks it up a bit to me. Like honestly, when Justice League came out, the version of Superman they showed was kind of bright and making jokes and stuff. I was like, this is kind of the Superman I want to see, right? Like this,
Yeah,
to me, this makes more sense than like, I don't
a
know.
dour Superman.
Yeah, for sure. I remember watching Man of Steel when he saved the kids in the bus and his dad's giving him a hard time about it. And he's like, what, should I just let them all die? And his dad's like, maybe. And I'm like, wow, this is not the kind of Superman movie I'm expecting to see.
You're like, damn, Kevin Costner, you're going real dark on that one.
Yeah, geez, man. There's a lot of busload of kids die to protect your secret. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's an okay trade-off.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's funny. Cool. So what's the future hold for you? Do you have any books coming down the pipeline beyond what you're working on currently, or?
Yeah. So Black Cat is still ongoing. New issues out next week. Taskmaster, I think the last two issues come out next month, due to the vagaries of the printing schedule.
Mhm.
So as Taskmaster finished up, Mech Strike just started up this month. So,
What was that? Sorry.
Sorry, Avengers Mech Strike,
Oh, okay.
as these Avengers in robot suits fighting giant monsters.
Right. I was looking into that. I want to know more about that. So is that like an alternate universe thing, or what's the deal with that story? Or can you
Yeah.
tell anything about it?
Oh, I mean, yeah. So the first issue's out.
Okay.
It's just a separate kind of side continuity thing.
Awesome. Very kaiju
Where
inspired.
yeah. I mean, the Marvel came to me there last spring and said, we're doing this book with the Avengers and they have robot suits. Like, what can you do with that? I'm like, well, I'm sure I can figure something out.
Does that connect to a toy line or something, or is it just something they want to do?
If it is, there's nothing I know about. They
Oh,
just said,
okay.
here's what we got. What can
Interesting.
you do with it?
I wonder if it's connected to like the, King Kong and Godzilla stuff coming out. They're trying to get in on that a little bit.
I mean, the greater marketing and merchandising hierarchy is well beyond my pay grade.
Oh, for sure. But no, that sounds really fun. It's big monster stuff, right? Like, or is
Yeah.
it?
The Avengers are not piloting Gundams or anything. It's like close to a Hulk Buster.
Oh yeah, cool. That sounds really fun.
With, like giant city-eating monsters, and our some of the 8 of the most marketable of the Avengers plus Spider-Man thrown in there.
Oh, awesome. Well,
Yeah, it's been a good time.
I'm going to add that to my list for sure. I got to go into the city this weekend, so I'll pick it up.
Nice.
That sounds
Then,
right up my alley for sure.
Beyond that, in April we've got Magic the Gathering starting with Boom, so I'm doing that book.
Oh, were you a Magic fan growing up? Magic cards?
Yeah. I was very keen on it when as a kid, and up through probably by the time I went to university.
Yeah, same with me.
So I think it would have been around Prophecy. I think I dropped off.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm trying to think of when I did. I traded it up for HeroClix basically, and then I got out of that too. So
Gotcha.
but it got to a point that I was just sick of buying. Same with HeroClix, packs of things that I didn't know what I was getting.
Yeah, that gets old pretty quick.
Yeah, especially if you're spending ridiculous amounts of money on stuff, the packs and stuff throughout the years.
So yeah, I was out of it for probably 20 years or so, and then uh, would have been in the spring as well.
Mhm.
Boom contacted me and said, "Hey, we're putting together this magic book. You interested in doing that?" I'm like, well, it's definitely something I have a lot of affection for. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Is it something unique to you, like your story, or is it fitting in within the world of the established characters from like the Weatherlight and those sort of things from back in the day?
yeah, it's dealing with the established characters. In the interim, they've developed a whole crew of unique planeswalker characters and continuing a story through their expansion sets.
Hmm.
So basically, when we start, we kind of just start building our own continuity with these characters. So basically just forks off at the point that this story starts.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun to kind of shift gears and get out of the superhero universe and get into basically a magical superhero universe.
Yeah, for sure. But at least it opens doors for the sort of things, different sort of narrative type, I suppose.
Yeah, it's certainly different expectations. So it's been a lot of fun to kind of work in that area and refamiliarize myself with kind of the world, the lore. Because I mean, if you thought superhero continuity was tough to get into, try going back through 20 years of Magic the Gathering meta narrative.
That's yeah, I'd imagine that would be pretty insane because like between the books and everything else, I remember reading those when I was younger as well, to connect everything. So it's quite the marketing machine they used to have back in the day. And it sounds like
Yeah.
a lot. My brother's still deeply into it. He plays it a lot. So
Oh,
I,
nice.
I get updates from him occasionally here and there about it.
Yeah, I've had one of my good friends from high school is still into it, so he's very much become my consultant for a lot of stuff when I was still getting my feet on the whole project.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question in itself because like with Marvel, you have sort of these histories, like and people. I'm assuming your editor or whoever that has a knowledge of the history of certain characters and what you can do with them, what you can't. With something like that, with Boom, I mean, I guess they must work closely with who's in charge of Magic now. It's not the Wizard of the Coast, is it?
Yeah, so Wizards of the Coast.
Okay, so like they must be like work in conjunction with their office because I don't imagine there's like a Boom editor that has as big an affinity for the history of Magic the Gathering as.
Yeah, I mean they're when they got the license, the editors would start going through and familiarizing themselves, and I mean for any sort of shared continuity or like long history of storytelling that you're suddenly dipping into, basically the internet and fan maintained wikis are basically a godsend.
Oh, awesome! That's cool that actually the fans get to do it. Their input gets to actually affect where the things they love so much continue to go on.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
Marvel fandom wiki, I'm on all the time just to track down characters and bits and bobs and things,
Mhm.
and then figure out where they last appeared, so I can track down their appearances and get updated and know what their situation is.
Have you
So it's
run into when you couldn't use a character like editorial said no, we're doing something with that?
um
I remember, I think it was when I talked with Ed Burson, he mentioned, I think it was Constrictor. He was going to use them, but
oh
he
yeah,
just died in another comic or something. So
yeah,
he
they
had
had to
to,
make a new Constrictor for Iron Fist.
yes, he mentioned that. Yeah. So he made it like it's the Constrictor's son.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't really think of anybody. Like I know I wanted to use Sabretooth for that Black Cat Madripoor story,
Mhm.
but it was pretty early on. Like that was just after he got Memory Hold there in X-Men. Or
When they made him a good guy, that one?
no, it's just when all the Krakoa stuff kicked off, and
Right, right, right,
he was a bit of a naughty fellow and was exiled to a hole in the ground.
right.
And so they're like, yeah, he's not coming out anytime soon. Find someone else. It's like, all right, I'll figure it out. But beyond that, I've been pretty lucky, especially in that mainly just because a lot of the characters that I was using, no one really cares about.
Mhm.
Like outside of like obviously having Doctor Strange guest star or like Iron Man guest star, but like no one really cares if you're gonna pull Xander the Merciless out or the Brothers Grimm or something like that.
Ah, that's awesome to use them. That must be freeing a bit too in the way that you can, if you have an affinity for those characters and a knowledge of them, that you can pull them out and not have to run into any issues with that. So, and also kind of do your
Yeah,
own thing. It's not like their history is so deep that there's a lot you really have to answer to.
that's the thing. It's fun to kind of dust off some largely forgotten characters
Yeah, I'm really pulling for the big wheel to make a return in Spider-Man comics.
I feel like the big wheel comes back every once in a while.
Every once in a while, someone throws him in as a joke, but I want to see him come back in a real way. Like, I don't know, just it's a dark, gritty story about the big wheel, making one last go of it.
Doing some real wheeling and dealing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That, or there's an old character that me and a friend always joke about. That shit wasn't I think he's a Spider-Man villain, or I don't know where he was, but Turner D. Century. Do you remember him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he showed up in Superior Spider-Man not too long ago, and I thought it was hilarious that someone dusted him off as well.
Yeah, I remember a joke someone made that they should bring back Turner D Century, but have him be obsessed with the 20th century because now we're in the 21st century.
Just doing that sort of retcon they do where they're like, oh, well, Spider-Man's 30 years old, but he's around for 60 years.
Yeah, because I mean, it's Turner D Century. He's not going to be.
It'd be great if you had a story. If you had a story like he has a son and the son's obsessed with the 20th century, and it's just like, it's like, you'll never understand, Dad, that sort of thing. And they're still both deeply outside of reality, but just they're both hung up on different centuries.
Yeah, the patient majesty of dial-up internet.
Yes, exactly. Awesome. So Boom Magic. So the Magic series for Boom, Black Cat, and the final couple issues, Taskmaster. What's on the go?
Yeah, I have a couple more things I'm working on for Marvel that haven't been announced yet, but hopefully will be relatively soon. So I'm really excited about that. I'm looking forward to being able to talk about them. So stay tuned, I guess.
Oh, fantastic! I'm looking forward to finding out what those are. Awesome. Well, anything else we didn't cover about your life up to this point?
No, I think that's about it.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, dude, thanks for coming on. It's a real treat to get to talk to people, that are as deeply involved in the comic industry as yourself. It's nice to get insight into, the methodology of some of the big guns out there. So.
And we love to talk about ourselves for hours on end, so.
For sure, and it's also really really rewarding to talk to local creators that have made a go of it and are doing well. So
yeah, that's something I didn't really know about until I had my first issue coming out, the Spider-Geddon one. I went down to Strange Adventures I was like, hey, I have a comic coming out next week. I kind of know if there's something somewhere you put stuff from local creators. It's like, well, you're like a Marvel comic out? I'm like, yeah. It's like, why don't you tell me this like way ahead of time? And I would have like ordered a bunch in, could have done a signing. I was like, oh, I didn't want to like try to be a big shot or something. I don't know.
I can literally picture Cal's face talking to you about that. And I could hear his voice in my head and how he was saying that.
Yeah. So I think it was like decaf like that weekend. So he's like,
wow.
Go to decaf. Like I know Ed Brisson's just moved here. He works for Marvel. He can tell you about stuff. And so yeah, that's how I met Ed.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great connection. Well, I got a message from a fan. I think he's from down my way. He listens to the podcast because I do every fourth episode is one of these interviews, and then the regular episodes are just the character histories of comic book characters. So he sent me a message saying he really enjoys it and thanks. And he was saying, he really likes the episodes where I talk to people like yourself who are, because like he, as a kid from like rural Antigonish, knowing that people like yourself from these sort of areas that have gone on and succeeded have been a real, I think he's a young guy, it's been a real motivation for him and some of his friends to know that it's like you said, it's not just something you need to be an American or grow up in a big city to be able to do. That now anybody can really do it if you just have the skill and the determination. So it's
yeah, totally. And like with the internet now, it's easier than ever before to get your work out there, make connections.
Absolutely.
Because like it's until I started working in comics, I had no idea how many like pros at various levels were living and working in the Maritimes. It's crazy.
Yeah, when I started doing the con circuit, just selling art and stuff, I had some indie comics too that I just self-printed and sold. I was kind of floored by how many people locally, and especially doing this as well. I mean, I've met a lot of them through the conventions. Yeah. But how many people locally are doing it and doing it well? It's really awesome to see. Yeah,
it's crazy. I had no idea.
I know it's a whole community that we're a part of, and it's really wonderful. And it's nice to get to know someone a little better that's in it as well. So
yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for being on, Jed.
Hey, my pleasure. And we'll but let's get some more stuff announced down in the future. I'd be happy to do it again.
Oh, dude, anytime you want to come on, let me know.
Perfect.
Awesome. Catch you later.
All right. See ya.
See you. Bye-bye. Wasn't that fun? It's a ton of fun, wasn't it? Yeah. I like talking to Jed a lot. He's a super cool guy. And me and him definitely have a lot in common when it comes to what we like to see in comics, the ones we fondly remember as kids, and all that sort of stuff. I had a really good talk with him. I'm really glad I got to do that. And big thanks to him for being our guest, and big thanks to you for tuning in. As far as the next episode, I haven't got to figure out who that's going to be yet. Probably be DC characters. Been a little while since I did one of those, kind of focusing on some of the WandaVision players as of late. But yes, I will be doing a new episode at the usual time next Saturday, week from now. And you can tune in on Monday for who that will be. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to talking to you next week.